Hi there. Have you ever been in a situation where someone is suggesting that you've done something wrong and you know you haven't, but you can't say so fully yet because the internal process isn't finished, or the timing's not right, or you know that the moment you defend yourself publicly, you hand them exactly the drama that they were hoping for? And so you sit there, clean hands, racing heart, wondering why on earth silence feels like an admission. It occurred to me that if you are or ever have experienced a kicking to your reputation, then I'd like to know that you have something to help you. And this week, that's what it's all about. It's about reputation management. Welcome to Unshakable Her, the podcast helping women in leadership build the influence, visibility, and presence to make promotion inevitable. I'm your host, Caroline Esterson. Let's get started. Here's what you're getting today. You'll know exactly why staying silent can be the most powerful move that you can make when your reputation is under attack, and when breaking that silence makes things, frankly, catastrophically worse. You'll understand why reputation threats hit so hard, even when you know the truth is on your side, including what Jon McLeod's Organ of the Body framework reveals about what you have probably been neglecting. And you'll walk away with a clearer sense of how to hold your ground when you can't fight back yet, whether you're the woman who takes up too much space or the one quietly overlooked while someone else takes the credit for your work. So today we are exploring the very specific, visceral experience of someone actively trying to damage your credibility, and doing it not through evidence, but through insinuation. The hint, the wink, the raised eyebrow in the meeting, the "I don't mean to be rude, but," or "I don't mean to spread rumours about, but," and suddenly your reputation, the thing that you spent years building, is carrying a bruise you didn't deserve. Here's what I've learned from years of working with leaders, from my own career, and from a conversation I had a few months ago with Jon McLeod, a partner at DRD Communications, who has spent his career helping leaders build and protect their reputations. Jon said something really powerful in my interview with him. He said, treat your reputation like an organ of the body. You build your physical strength. You think about your mental strength. But how often do you think about how you're being perceived and whether that perception is being quietly shaped by someone else? Today, we're talking about that. And we're going to talk about two very different women it happens to, because this doesn't only happen to the loud ones or the ones who take up space. It happens to the quiet ones too. And the lessons underneath it is the same for both. So let's start today somewhere that might surprise you. I want to share a few snippets from my career, not the polished version of it, but instead the version that I don't really like to talk about because it's a bit painful, honestly. But it's real, and my hope is that sharing this will help you too. Early in my career, I was involved in leading a restructure. Pretty standard stuff, right? Except I received a battering from the department I was restructuring. People spat at me in the car park. My car was damaged, and someone even sent me an envelope with something really rather gross inside through the internal mail. And in doing so, they made it very clear that someone wanted to put me in my place. I'm not going to go into detail, but I will tell you that the message accompanying it was not about my work. It was about me, and making sure I knew that my energy, my drive, my visibility were not welcome here. Someone had decided I was a problem for them. And rather than say it to my face, they did it anonymously. That's not feedback. That is a personal attack. I've also at times been on the end of gossip that was deliberate and calculating, designed not to destroy me outright because that would be too obvious, but to make people wonder, to plant just enough doubt that when opportunities came up, there was a quiet little voice in someone's ear saying, but is she really the right fit for us? Nobody says anything you can specifically quote. Nobody sends an email you can screenshot. It just circulates, and you can feel it happening without being able to prove a single thing. And the last one that I want to tell you about is that I had to leave one organisation because the culture there was trying to shrink me. I was told by my director that I wouldn't get on because I was, quote, a maverick. I wasn't. I just saw things that could be improved and I wanted to improve them. What's so wrong in that? Now, These are my stories, but they are also the stories of many ambitious women everywhere. I've seen them time and time again where capable women are being undermined. But here's the thing. My story has a particular kind of flavour. I am high energy, I take up space and I have opinions. So you might be listening and thinking, well, that's not me. I just keep my head down. I don't make waves. That would never happen to someone like me. Well, let me introduce you to Ruth. Ruth is a senior ops manager, 6 years in the same organisation, the person everyone goes to when something actually needs delivering. She's calm, precise, and utterly unflappable. The one that everyone quietly relies on. Ruth doesn't self-promote. She doesn't need to. Her work speaks loudly enough. Or so she thought. A new director arrived, and they are looking for a quick win. Do you know what he does? He starts absorbing Ruth's pipeline of work and presenting it upwards as his own. Ruth does everything right. She documents, she raises it calmly and clearly through the correct channels. She's professional, measured, and precise. And suddenly she's difficult to work with. Suddenly there are whispers that she's resistant to change. Suddenly 6 years of excellence becomes evidence that she's set in her ways and not leadership material. She pushed back correctly, and that alone was enough to make her a problem. But maybe Ruth's story is not about a new boss at all. Maybe it's quieter than that. Ruth doesn't do office gossip. She never has. She doesn't enjoy that side of work, so she avoids it where she can. She turns up, delivers, and goes home. But here's what nobody tells you about refusing to join the gossip circle. When you don't participate, you become a mirror. And some people really don't like what they see in it. So the story about Ruth shifts. She's not warm. She's a bit cold. You can never quite read her. There's something a little off about her. She's not said a word against anyone. She's simply declined to participate. And that declination gets quietly reframed as arrogance. Maybe the director Ruth has worked under for years is suddenly feeling the heat from above, and he needs to look good fast. Ruth's 6 years of careful, methodical work has built something quietly extraordinary. Systems that run, relationships that hold, and institutional knowledge that no one else has. And when he reaches for all of it, presents it, takes the credit, Ruth, who would never in a million years shout about what she's built, finds that her silence is being used against her. The work is visible, but she's not. A different woman to me, different energy, different trigger, but an identical attack. Because whether you're too much for the room or just quietly getting on with it, someone, somewhere will find a reason if they need to. The attack is rarely about what you did. It's about what your presence, your competence, and your refusal to play the game reveals in them. In episode 19 of the show, I chatted to Jon McLeod, who spent decades advising leaders through reputational crises. Politicians, business leaders, people whose names you would recognise. And the first thing he said is that it's vital to understand this. Treat your reputation like an organ of the body. You build your physical strength. You think about your mental strength. But how often do you actually think about your reputation as something that needs tending, protecting, and actively looking after, not just when it's under attack all the time? And then he makes a distinction that double downs on this. He says, self-perception is actually useless. What you think of yourself is almost irrelevant. The truth in reputational terms lives in how others perceive you. And the only way to know that is to ask, which, as Jon puts it brilliantly, is horrible. Nobody wants to do it. You don't even want to ask your mum what she thinks. But here's the thing. If you're not asking, you're not tending. And if you're not tending, you're leaving your reputation unattended. And an unattended reputation is one that someone else can quietly shape for you. That's how my reputation for becoming a maverick got created, and it held me back in that company. Jon goes on to explain, and this cuts even deeper, you can't talk your way out of a bad reputation. So let's look at the evidence here, people we've all heard of. Michelle Mone and Prince Andrew are prime examples of this. Michelle Mone, the Conservative peer whose family benefited from PPE MedPro after it secured more than 200 million in government contracts during the pandemic. She kept explaining, clarifying and giving interviews until the story became less about the original controversy and more about the explaining itself. Prince Andrew, whose reputation was already under intense scrutiny because of his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein and the allegations made against him, sat down for what remains one of the most jaw-dropping BBC interviews in recent history and made his reputational damage catastrophically worse. In trying to make everyone understand his perspective, he gave the public a whole new set of details to question, scrutinise and remember. And then there's Prince Harry, and this one is more complicated because Prince Harry has not done anything objectively wrong in the way the other two had. He stood up for himself, told his truth. He was visible and vocal about his experience. And yet, for a significant proportion of the British public, his reputation took a direct hit precisely because of that. Which raises a question that I think is a little bit uncomfortable. Is it possible to do everything right, tell the truth, stand your ground, and still lose the reputational battle? The answer, and I wish it were not, is yes. Because reputation is not just about your truth. It's about narrative, timing, audience, and how much trust you had in the bank before things went sideways. Harry had an audience who loved him, but he spent it. Whether that was the right call is a conversation for another day. But the lesson for you is this. Before you respond, before you defend or go public, think about what you're spending and whether the timing is right. The unspoken rule book. Know the rules, own the game. And here at page 52, subsection 1, we have your reputation is not just built by what you do. It's shaped by what other people need to believe about you in order to feel okay about themselves. When your competence, your energy, or your refusal to play the game makes someone else uncomfortable, you become a problem that needs a narrative, and they'll write one if you don't. Now, you might think I'm being really cynical, but I'm not. That's just how organisations work when the culture isn't strong enough to hold brilliant people safely. Jon McLeod talks about this in terms of what he calls the perception of others being the actual truth. Not your truth, not what happened, what people believe happened. And in a vacuum where you're silent and someone else isn't, they get to fill that vacuum with whatever serves them. So the unspoken rule here is not to be more political. It's not about playing the game. It is never leave your reputation unattended. Tend it like the organ of the body that it is. Before the crisis, not during it. So let's come back to those 3 things I promised you at the start. Why does it hit so hard even when you know the truth is on your side? Well, that's because your brain processes reputational threat the same way it processes physical danger. And because the perception of others, as Jon McLeod puts it, is the truth in this context, even when it's wrong. The impact is completely real, even when the accusation is not. Why is silence sometimes the most powerful move? Well, because responding from the wound before the timing is right, before the process is complete, before you fully know your audience, well, that can make the situation catastrophically worse. Michelle Mone, Prince Andrew are prime examples of this. The explanation becomes the story, and we're going to go much deeper in this on Wednesday. And what do you actually do when you can't fight back yet? You hold your ground. You document, you regulate your nervous system before you respond to anything. You treat your reputation like that organ of the body, which means tending it consistently, not just when it's under attack. And you remind yourself that Ruth did nothing wrong. You did nothing wrong. The attack is not evidence of your weakness. It's the evidence of someone else's. On Wednesday, I'm bringing you the science, and I promise you, it is really fascinating. We're going to talk about what's actually happening in your brain when someone attacks your credibility, why you can't stop replaying it at 3 a.m, what the research tells us about staying steady when every instinct in your body wants to fight back. Because, of course, just rise above it isn't a strategy, is it? And you deserve better than that. That's it for today. But before you go, if a woman came to mind while you were listening, maybe the one who's stuck, the one circling a promotion, the one you know is quietly wondering if it's just her, send her this episode, because she gets to feel less alone and you get to be the woman who refused to let her stay stuck, who reached back instead of scrolling on. Be in her corner like I'm in yours. See you Wednesday.